Welcome to the Generation Fit podcast, guys. Episode number 28. I'm your co-host, Benji, with my co-host, Chris. And today, we've gotten hundreds of questions about what is the best split for corporate busy men? What is the best exercise routine for these guys as well? We have been accumulating lots of questions, answering them week to week, but this has been a big common denominator on the training side. So, Chris, when you have someone that asks you something like this, because it's a very simple question, but it's also very broad, there's a lot we could go into here. What is the kind of first thing that comes to mind for you?
I automatically ask them a question back, which is, how many days a week are you willing to train for the rest of your life? And that automatically shifts the perspective because they usually come in gung-ho, trying to work out 7 days a week when they were initially working out 0 to 1 days a week.
Yeah.
And it's just setting yourself up for failure. So the first question is, how many days a week are you working out? Most people actually land at 2 to 3, which is perfect. It's the perfect amount. And here, I'll bring it to the other side, right? So it is an absolutely loaded question. So we know that it's mostly 2 to 3 for most people. And then knowing in the science, the scientific variables that you need in training are these confinements, right? And these little variables, ready? So volume, right? So it's how many sets per week are you hitting each body part, right? And then how hard are you training? Every single set, you should be taking very close to failure. So by the end of the set, you should not be able to do another 0 to 2 reps, just depending on the exercise. Right? And then in terms of your exercise selection, you're making sure that your confinement's probably like an hour because you're a corporate desk worker. So that means you're probably doing more compound exercises, more exercises to hit more body parts, right? And then you're doing any isolations that if you have extra time or if you want to build a certain body part, okay? And then you just got to make sure that you're progressing, making sure that you're increasing reps, weight, week to week, month to month, not giving up technique. And guess what? Those are the major variables to make you successful in a training program. So guess what? Your training protocol could be a bunch of different splits if you go out to the gym more times than not. But guess what? 2 to 3 does confine you just a little bit because you have to hit all those variables to be successful. So it is a loaded question, but I'll start there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just ask my clients, pretty much the same question you do, same principle. I asked them, how many days a week you definitely go to the gym unless your grandma gets run over by a car? And, you definitely can't go that day. Hopefully not. I mean, that would be serious dedication if you could. But, but that question is actually in the spirit of what we're trying to ask. It's like, in the case of an emergency being the only viable excuse, how many times a week can you definitely go? Because a perfect program on paper becomes very imperfect and probably one of the worst programs if you aim to go 5 times a week and you're following all these principles that you just described, but then you're only able to adhere to half the days of the week. Because when you do that, you're not able to adhere to the principle of, maybe are you hitting each muscle 2 times a week? Are you giving yourself enough recovery to go back and hit it again? There's not enough space for that anymore. Some muscles, if we do like the 5-day splits sometimes for clients because they're not prioritizing legs, that's actually one of the splits for guys who are training like 1 leg day with a push and pull day. I believe we do push pull variations of that, legs and push pull. Well then that's going to be the perfect excuse then to just miss legs, and then you're going to have no legs. You're going to have chicken legs, right? So it's not a very good idea. Something we've talked about a lot on prior podcasts is clients who get addicted to working out. Clients who never wanted to work out in the first place, but they're like, I guess I'll do it. If that's what's required to get the result I want, fine, Chris, fine, Benji, that's what I'll do. But then they grow accustomed to it and they really enjoy it and they're asking for more days. But how do we get there? We don't get there and get them addicted to it by starting off of 5 days a week from a starting point of 0. We get there from them starting at 2 days a week, 3 days a week, a lower barrier to entry. Why? If it's a lower barrier to entry, they're actually going to do it. They're actually going to adhere to it. They're going to be consistent with it. If you are consistent and you prove that consistency to yourself, you're going to feel a lot more motivated to continue doing hard things in general because you already associate what you've been doing with success, with winning. So the more you win in something, the more motivated you are to keep doing it. The more you see results, the more motivated you are to keep doing it. if you aim to go 5 times a week, you only go half. You feel like you're only half as good. You feel like you've only done half as good of a job that week, and you get less results because your program was set up for 5 times a week and you didn't go 5 times a week. So that's an instant way to set yourself up for failure, I'd say.
Yeah, I highlighted this on my story, I think yesterday, and I had 2 guys back to back on my client check-ins, and they're like, dude, like, I enjoy this process, right? I only go 2 to 3 times a week. Seeing the progress. I enjoy the workouts because I know what I need to do, how many sets, how many reps, what the weights are, how kind of progression I'm using.
Yeah.
And it's just enjoyable when you know that the plan is going to work as long as you execute. And that's awesome. And now they're asking for more days, right? And they're like, man, I want to go. I'm itching to go. It hurts when I don't go. And that's where you want to get to. So to get there, right, obviously you do have to go. So then now the question is, all right, well, I'm a corporate desk worker. I'll only go 2 to 3 times a week. What training split is probably going to be best for me or for the average person in this demographic? And the answer right away, the easiest way to do it is going to be 2 or 3 full body days. So if you're going twice a week, it's got to be 2 full body days. You actually have almost no other way around it, because to hit a body part twice per week and you're only going twice to the gym, well, that automatically means it's just a common divisible number, so that you have to go 2 full body days. If you go 3, then it becomes that you probably can do like a push, a pull, and then a full body hitting both sides of the body, upper and lower. Right? So like that's like the other variable. Otherwise it'd be 3 full body days, which is what we recommend. Okay. And it's also just with the variables, it's also recovery too. Because if you do 2 full body days and you split them up at least 1 day apart, you probably can hammer most of these muscle groups and be pretty recovered, maybe except for like hamstrings, right? And if you do 3 days a week, and you split them up, then you're able to also recover from most of your workouts. Like I said before, probably just not the hamstrings.
Yeah.
But that's why we do 3 full body days, because then you at least hit each body part twice per week. You can load up volume on each muscle group, which is about 8 to 10 sets per week, which is only like 3 sets of every single body part every time you walk into the gym, realistically speaking.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can train hard, right? You're not deathly sore, hopefully, by every single time you walk into the gym, maybe in the beginning, but after that, and once you get used to it, you're not deathly sore every time. So then therefore you can keep progressing week to week by adding weight, adding reps. So that's why we believe full body is the best for the most part for the people in this confinement.
Yeah, in this confinement, absolutely. For me, it's definitely not the most fun, but if I was doing 3 times a week, I think that it would be the most fun it could be, because it's all I know also, right? So it's like, if I don't know training one body part one day, 5 days a week doing that, well then full body, that'll be fun. You're going to see results. That's what you're going to grow. That's what you're going to associate with the man that looks much better looking back in the mirror, and that's what matters. And the biggest thing is this, to understand that you laid out some principles before, right? Like, as long as you're training somewhat close to failure, I don't remember the exact ones that you named in order, but like, if you are training close to failure, if you're hitting muscle groups twice a week, if your technique doesn't completely suck, if your exercise selection doesn't completely suck, we'll add that as well. Imagine you're just doing like all deadlifts only across the whole week, nothing else. But if all those ducks are in order, well then I think it's all ducks in a row. I'm pretty sure that's the saying. In order, like a drill sergeant. But yeah, if all ducks are in a row there, well then that accounts for like 80% of the result you're going to get anyways, right? Whereas the people who get the worst results, I'll tell you hands down, reverse engineer from their lack of progress, is they're asking questions that fall within the 20% or 10% of results they'd actually get by putting in so much more effort to get there, or things that aren't even applicable to them yet because they haven't been lifting long enough yet, right? Like, so I would say that if you just hone in on those basic principles and you follow a program that just gets those right somewhat, and you work really hard and you're consistent with that, that's the biggest thing, you're consistent with that, then in terms of how it relates to training variables, you're pretty much doing everything you can. You're getting 80% of what you need from like 20% of the input that you're putting in. Whereas like that other 20% of like, what exact time should I eat my meals? Like, how should I space my protein out? Like, what micronutrients like should I have included in my meal? Like, should I take this exact supplement because it's gonna raise my testosterone by like 3 points and across 5 years, or I'll see a little bit of a result? Like I'm exaggerating a little bit there, but like these are some of the questions that we get, and it's like, hold on a second, like you're asking these questions, but you don't even consistently go 4 times a week. Like, let's get that program consistent first before we ask any of these questions.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I think we can touch on the other side, right? So I think most guys do come to us and they actually have an idea of training splits. So I would say is let's
Your
talk
guys
about
do.
well, I would say is like they have heard of it or they have done it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they see it on the internet. So it's like they always this question comes
Gotcha.
with pre-context. So a lot of times guys in general will come to us and they'll generally say like, hey, what's the best training split? And I'll talk on the opposite side, right? So I think the most common ones that you hear are like the push-pull legs, the chest, tries, back, buys, legs, shoulders, abs, arms, right? Like these kinds of body part splits.
Yeah.
And here's the reason why we do not recommend them for 99% of people, right? Besides, it doesn't cross off the scientific variables, right, for a successful training program. Like that's one already. So let's cross that off because we just talked about that. 2, we know that most people will just end up skipping their least favorite day, which just ends up being legs 99% of the time and abs, right? So if we incorporate that into 2 full body days, well, guess what? You ain't going to miss it because it's already programmed in there. And also, they're not going to hate it so much because it's also not doing, for example, 4 exercises on the same muscle group. So you're not walking around lifting up your legs every step of the way going to work.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas like, yeah, you're sure, you do a set of squats. You haven't done squats in a while. And then the next day you're like, okay, I'm a little sore. Like, yeah, like putting on my pants was hard, but it's not like what you see in the gym where, everybody's legs are shaking and trembling, walking down the staircase, and then you're collapsing. Somebody has to carry you and wheelchair you out. No. That ain't gonna
It's
happen.
the only way you know you trained hard.
Yeah, definitely later in your training cycle if you just enjoy this and you really want to push yourself, sure. But the people we talk to, it's definitely like, okay, we just gotta get the bare minimum in, and what can we do in the bare minimum to get you the maximum result?
Yeah.
It's
Because even then they get really sore too. Like that's the thing is like they do the bare minimum for the first 8 weeks. They'll do like 4 to 6 sets of quads in the first 8 weeks per week, and they're like excruciatingly sore just from that because they've learned to train themselves to failure and use good technique. It's like those 2 things alone with like 3 to 6 sets crush their legs.
Oh,
so,
brutal.
Guys who want to do like a full leg day, like, and we've never done it before. Also, that's actually, when you understand the context, you'd understand how much of a psycho you are for asking that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I'd say the same with shoulder. I would say arms in general too. People are like, oh, I can do infinite amounts of volume, and I'm like, how? How can you do infinite amounts of volume? Like I take 3 sets of like I'd say biceps, make it easy, right? And before I touch on other stuff, but 3 sets of biceps or 2 exercises of biceps in one day. Watch. If I do one behind my, like more behind me, like an incline curl or a Dr. Mike curl, right? And then I do a preacher curl after that, I'm not picking up my son like the next day. Like it's not happening.
I know, yeah. I think it comes from a few things. Like I think it comes from like how our technique is because like we get into the stretch position a lot more. Like there's more soreness there. We we slow down the negative portion maybe a lot more than guys who are swinging the weight up. But I think the other thing is probably a genetic component as well because there are the people who train like us and then they still do like 25 sets of biceps and they're like, yeah, I need 25 sets of biceps. And it's like that. But maybe even like Eric Helms like is that example too. Like for guys listening, Eric Helms is just like a science-based fitness podcaster also who talks about training and nutrition and all of this. But yeah, he understands how weird it is and explains how weird it is every time. He's like, most of my clients, I recommend like 8 to 15 sets on most things, like in between there, maybe 6 to 15 sets. He's like, me, I do like 30 to 45 sets of like every muscle group. And somehow that he's like, I don't know. It makes no sense. Like I tested it multiple times and like I can recover from it. And that's what I need. And it's like, wow. Okay. So clearly genetics play a role, guys, a little bit. But yeah, that's unbelievable to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just know that with science, the whole point is that if you ever look at it, it's just that we talk in averages, right? We talk in averages, and that every time you see a scatter plot, or when you line up, let's say, 100 of participants that are completely, let's say, randomized above the age of 18 and let's say 45, what you see is there's always 80 to 90% in this average straight line like this, right? Saying like more sets, more work, whatever. And then eventually you have like 3 or 4 dots just like plotted somewhere, and you're like, well, this guy didn't get results at 2 sets a week, and then this guy didn't get results at 35 sets a week. You know what I mean? Like it's just all over the place. So it definitely has to play with genetics and also your recovery, sleep, lifestyle, sure.
Yeah.
But the whole point coming back to it is if you do any other split besides something of a full body, when you only go twice a week, just know if you miss a day, that means the next week you already missed technically like 10 days of hitting that muscle group. Right, which is not stimulative of muscle to, in this case, for most of the skinny fat guys here, it's you want to build muscle and lose the fat. But if you're not training that body part and you missed it, let's just say, then you have like 10 days of rest for those muscle groups, and you can definitely be sure that it's not going to be in the right direction that you want to. So if you do 2 full body days a week, you hit twice per week. And if you do just miss one because of life happening, guess what? You've already hit every single body part.
Yeah.
All the way through.
Absolutely. I think that we made the podcast End All Podcast on exercise splits then for our guys listening to this. I think if we speak now about like the natural question people are going to ask is, well, what workouts do I do within like that twice a week split, for example, right? Like how do we structure, I mean, even never mind the 2 times a week, how do we structure our full body days? What does that look like? What movement patterns are we generally recommending? Because I would first say with context, what's more important than the individual examples of each exercise is why we do each exercise. So what is that movement pattern actually, right? Like why do we do an incline dumbbell press? Like what is that? Why do we do maybe a shoulder press? Why do we do a barbell row and a lat pull down instead of a barbell row and a cable row, right? Like what is the structure in which our workouts are set up?
Yeah, so this is actually a perfect transition. So in terms of setting up the structure of a workout, right? The movements that we choose make it so that we are generally balanced aesthetically and functionally. Okay? Yeah. So I'll say it scientifically. So in a full body workout and in a week, you want to make sure you hit these types of movements in these categories. So you have a knee dominant movement like a squat, a leg press. You have a hinge, which could be a deadlift of any sort, Romanian deadlift, etc. Then you have vertical push and pull. Think of your shoulder presses, pull-ups for the pulling side, or lat pull downs. They have horizontal push and pull, which is like your dumbbell rows, barbell rows, and then also your dumbbell presses or barbell bench presses.
Yep.
Right? And then those are your major 6, and then you can argue the 7 and 8, which is like probably like a carry, right? And then some sort of ab stability. But the whole point is that you need to have those in a week. And if you're only going twice per week, that means you're probably going to do 4 and 4, and then by then
most of your program.
It's most of your program already. But that's the point. That's the entire point. Like your confinements within these variables, like you only have 4 and 4, and then you probably could do 2 accessory exercises after that, just to round out some things, or maybe you want some bigger biceps, or maybe you want shoulders so they can walk through doorways, or maybe you want the gnarliest looking like calves, so you just end up doing 25 sets of calves. All I'm saying is, it's like not most likely. I've trained 10 plus years. I've not had one person come to me and say I want the biggest calves in the world. Actually, most people are like, they're actually on the opposite side. They're like, I have chicken legs and calves, but I'm not going to work on them.
Like, you had one guy that asked you about calves, right? Because he was perfect everywhere else. Your model friend.
my model friend. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
He asked you about calves
Yeah,
because
screw
he's so
him.
perfect everywhere.
Yeah, I'll populate a picture on this, and you'll be like, That's just an unbelievable human being, like
Yeah.
6'5", like just the genetic Adonis. And he's like, my calves aren't as big as I want them to be. And I was like,
Yeah.
really? I was like, really? Not the 99.9% of literal every hair follicle to the eye shape to like nothing.
It's like, no, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Like, yes. Oh, God forbid your calves, right?
Yeah. He's like perfect V taper, perfect face, perfect hair. My dick's 12 inches. Like,
Yeah, it's like unbelievable. It's like unfair. But yeah, back to our point. So like, look, in your workouts, like watch this. If you're like Chris, Benji, what the hell do I do in my workouts? What exercises? Like, if you were to give me an example of 2 full body days, what can I do when I go to the gym? What would you do?
Okay, cool. So I'll give one, and then you give the next one off of what I did. So we show how it makes sense. So, all right, first thing we're having guys do, a lot of times, especially in the beginning anyways, is the leg movement, because it's a lot harder to skip it if it's first. That's number one, because if it's at the end, you're already tired, and you're like, no way, right? Because it is going to be one of the most tiring movements. So let's say we start a guy off with a squat, if you're more of a beginner, a goblet squat, right? Holding a kettlebell right up against your chest, maybe having your heels elevated on a plate and just simply squatting down at a good tempo and coming back up, right? For 8 to 12 reps, let's say. Next thing on the program, incline dumbbell press. So this is huge. Why? I mean, you could do anywhere from typically 30 to 45 degree incline is probably best practice for 90% of people. And this would be your horizontal pressing movement. This would be your main chest builder. It would also work a little bit of your front shoulders and your triceps as well. Notice how we're using compound movements here, so it works multiple muscles, because we can't isolate everything. We don't have, one, you wouldn't do that anyways, but you don't have enough time to do that, even if it did work well for you. Okay, after that, we have a lot of guys do dumbbell rows. Variations of them, without a doubt. A really good one is chest-supported dumbbell rows, especially if they're doing squats for the first time, right? We don't want to load their lower back so much on that first day. We want to make it easy to do the technique, so we would do dumbbell rows. Okay, after dumbbell rows, I mean, a lot of times we'll throw in accessory movements in here. So we'll have a lateral raise for shoulders, and the second accessory usually would be bicep curls, right? So those are 2 of the muscle groups people typically like to work on. So we throw those accessories in. Then you have your ab stability. So you have your ab stability right there. And that's typically what the workout would look like. I don't think I'm missing anything off the top of my head. You were able to listen to me while I was doing that. So
Yeah, that was basically most of it, right? Like that's, especially for beginners, like right away, that's 100% correct.
Yeah, so we would do the inverse now of some of the movement patterns, right? Like some of the movement patterns you keep the same, but like Chris, if you were to hear that workout, right? So like to recap what I just went over, we have a squat variation, we have a push variation, right? So incline dumbbell press, we have dumbbell rows, we have 2 isolation movements, lateral raises for shoulders, and bicep curls for your biceps, obviously. And then we have an ab stability movement. What are you doing on day 2 then, if you're doing that on day 1?
Yep. So now you do the other movement patterns that you haven't hit before, right? So now you have, starting off with the hip hinge. So most people just need to learn how to hip hinge right away. Like, it's the hardest movement to do, and it's just all about shooting your butt back, feeling a stretch in the hamstring, and then coming right back up, standing nice and tall. Most people can't even do that properly. Most people feel that in their lower back, or they bend their knees too much. So this right away, you're not going to load. You're just going to practice. Okay? So starting off with a hip hinge for 3 sets, most likely for 8 to 12. Then you're going to do a vertical push. Since you already did a horizontal push last week, vertical push could be anything like a dumbbell overhead press. Okay? You're going to do that for about 3 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps. And then a vertical pull, since you've already done a horizontal pull. So in this vertical pull, we usually start off with a lat pull down to make sure we teach how to aim for the chest as you pull, pulling your shoulder blades down and back, which is actually one of the hardest things to do, since a lot of us sit forward like so with bad posture, and then on our phones all day. So this is teaching you to make sure that you're pulling back correctly. All right, so those are your major compounds now. So now for the rest of the way here, it's isolations, and it's more to round out. So all the muscles that you have not necessarily touched. So for example, this is where you can do your bicep work, tricep work, and then probably some sort of ab work, right?
Yeah.
And then if you like, then you could definitely do some. This is where you could also throw in some calves too. But the whole point is that now you've hit every single muscle group twice this week, right? You got all the big movements in, so that means your muscles are going to develop evenly, so you don't end up walking like a Dorito and then, chicken legs. So you're able to be functional, right? Be able to pick things up, be able to sit down, be able to tie your shoes,
Be able to take a shit.
yeah, actually take a shit without a problem, right? Or have lower back issues and not actually have it for the first time. But that basically rounds out every muscle group twice per week, except maybe like a hamstring curl on day 1, just to make sure that you also hit the hamstring twice per week, realistically speaking. But otherwise, that's it. That's the workout. Like, we just laid out exactly what you can go do right now. And if you're like, Chris, Benji, I have no idea where to start. It's like, we just laid it out. Just rewind this 30 seconds to a minute, and you can easily pull it together and be like, wow, I can just do this for probably 6 months and just get stronger week by week.
I mean, you can do it forever in theory, or variations of it, right? It's like you could, like you said, 6 months probably to continue getting result. Maybe you have to go up to 3, but you could probably get perpetual results in the position that you're at 3 times a week. So variations of what we just described, you can do that almost forever, right? And it's going to be a heck of a lot better than the local trainer at your gym, paying him $1 million for him to have you doing like jump squats and battle ropes. Right, so you guys could use this, and it's already more valuable than $1,000 a month the trainer, honestly, right? So that's what you guys got to understand is, like, if you're listening to this and you're not working out right now, or you're not working directly with us, well, use this. Otherwise, you're just watching like 2 guys talk, and I guess you just think we're so handsome that you're still watching the episode. But,
Ben just got a haircut. That's why. He's saying that.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't tell anyone. I was seeing if they noticed. If you enjoyed episode number 28, subscribe on the platform you're watching it on, and follow us on our IGs. Mine's BenjiTucker.fit. Chris, yours is
Coach_Chris Lee.
Have a good one, guys.